coming. They were anticipating a decline in state aid. What they did not see coming was this drastic step to slow down the phase out of the tangible personal property tax. I should say to speed it up.
Yeah.
And we saw superintendents use words like catastrophic, a betrayal, and the case people hurt themselves by, first of all, rolling this out in a piecemeal fashion, allowing everybody to tear them apart while it was happening. And the governor himself and his people at the beginning said, we're going to give schools more money. Technically, they did when you exclude stimulus money.
And that one line item, yeah.
But, in fact, superintendents are going to see a lot smaller checks from the state. So what this all means is we're going to see more requests for local school levies. We're going to see more things like pay to play. We're going to see more layoffs. It's inevitable.
And it's interesting, the headline in the Dispatch, schools didn't see this coming. Budget Director Tim Keene was on our TV show, The State of Ohio, this week, saying schools should have seen this coming. That the governor was clear that the federal stimulus dollars would not be replaced, that these phase-outs were in state law, and that they should have been prepared for this. So it's interesting that you bring that up because did they see it coming? Did they not see it coming? If they knew it was coming, could they have even prepared for it?
They were preparing for the phase-out to take until like 2017. So a few more years than 2012.
Except that for local governments, it's supposed to be phased up by 2018. School districts, were guaranteed in theory in perpetuity, which points out the fact that everybody keeps talking to school districts. When you see a guarantee, it will not last. And a guarantee from a financial standpoint is stupid when you talk about this, because here's the reasons why. You're guaranteeing a tax income revenue on a plant that could have closed 5 years ago. Okay? And you're not giving them money to compensate for the stresses of having some new development. Because when development occurs, the communities are inconvenienced by that. You do that by offsetting that inconvenience by allowing them to collect more money to pay for police, fire, schools, stuff like that. This whole thing was frozen in time. It was locked in amber. It was a bad policy and needed to be shifted, and they should have seen it coming.
The Innovation Ohio, the sort of left-leaning research group, claims the Kasich administration tried to hide this. Did they try to hide this, or was it just they didn't make a big deal out of it? Or was there anything sinister here, or is it just...
I think Joe was right. It was piecemeal. It was fed to us individually in parts, and it was hard to put all the pieces together and try to figure out exactly what the impact was. I mean, we were told at the budget briefing, almost one of the first things Governor Kasich said was there will be more money in state aid to schools, but then we start finding this information as it trickles down. And so it's hard to figure out exactly what the intent was because the information was sent out bit by bit.
And I think you're right. And I think what they did was they said there's going to be more money to schools, and because there's going to be more money to schools, we're going to double or triple or quadruple the number of vouchers that are going to be available. So don't worry, public school systems, there's going to be more money, so what we're going to take away and give the charter schools isn't going to hurt you. Oh, by the way, it's more money, except it's not really more money.
The governor says he does not want to see local taxes go up. Is that realistic?
I don't know that's in his control in a sense because that's a local issue and you've got local communities and school districts that are saying we can't do anything else other than consider this.
Taxes and not
right, but in terms of a local tax, I mean that's really a local decision, isn't it?
He's committed to not raise state taxes. He's said, local governments, please don't raise your taxes, or I don't want to see you raise your taxes, which only means you can cut services. And we have to circle all the way back on this whole school funding thing and realize that we're still, no matter what we're doing, we're rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship because we know that it's an unconstitutional, unsustainable method for funding schools at its very core.
But I think this, it's hard to talk about any of this stuff within a silo without bleeding into governance reform.
Let's get to that.
Okay, and
Let's get to that right now, Jim.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
You're right.
Ohio?
Well, hold on. No. I got to let the people know what this is all about. Okay. All right. Hold on one second. He's chomping at the bit here. The way to possibly keep local tax increases at bay is to change the way local government operates. There are nearly 4,000 local government bodies in Ohio, more than 600 school districts. That means 4,000 government executives, 4,000 boards and commissions, 600 superintendents, at least 600 deputy superintendents, 600 school committees. All right, Gene Krebs, We know you think that local government needs to consolidate. So here you go. 30 seconds, elevator pitch. How do we do it?
We can't afford our current structure anymore. Last year, Ohio.
Well, we know that. How do you do it?
Ohio was ninth. Well, we do it through mergers and consolidations and shared services. But the current statutes, the Ohio Revised Code, does not allow us to do mergers across most levels. No way to merge townships. There's no way to consolidate a whole series of services, and shared services shared services by and large work about as well as my diet.
So you got to change the state law.
Have to change state law, but you also have to change how people view this. Look, last year we were 9th highest in local tax obligation of all the 50 states. Now we're 6th highest. Okay, we have 41.3 local governments per county. The national average is 27.9. If we could just become mediocre, it'd be an advantage.
So why weren't these changes in the state budget, or what do you think?
Well, what we're seeing is an ideology at play here, starting with the Kasich administration, smaller government, less taxes, trickling down into the locals, and it's forcing reform. It's going to force consolidation of government entities and shared services, which frankly I don't think is such a bad thing.
Right. I think that the shared services piece is something that to me seems like low-hanging fruit, and this is kind of a way to force people to actually reach out and do that. I mean, I grew up in central Indiana with Unigov, where there was the city of Indianapolis and the county of Marion are essentially exactly the same entity. That actually works fairly well after a little bit of pain. And the other thing that I think is kind of interesting is that we're sitting inside of Franklin County looking at how many different cities and how many different mayors and how many different townships and so forth, and then realize that the entire county is being governed by a commission of only 3 people. People complain that the city of Columbus only has 7 city council people, and I go, but the county of Franklin only has 3.
But Karen, there was an article in the paper, very simple thing. Let's consolidate dispatching services. And if you read between the lines, that didn't go over. That went among the agency that would get sort of squeezed out. They didn't like that.
That's it. I think when you start talking about consolidation, somebody's got to give. Somebody's got to give up power. Somebody's got to give up their seat. Somebody's got to give up their money. And that's a problem. You know, we talk about consolidating school districts. It's not about consolidating football teams, and you still get to keep your football team maybe. But when you start talking about consolidating actual, entities and communities, that's when I think it gets dicey for a lot of people. And this issue of local control, I think people like the idea of being able to go to their local officials and talk to them about individual problems and not feeling like everything comes from the state or everything comes from a bigger entity than one they're more comfortable with.
I agree with you, Karen. I think it's very difficult. For instance, I think the classic example here is the village of Valley View, which sits in the middle of the city of Columbus and is basically a speed trap on Hague Avenue. That it would make so much sense to just take over the city of Valley View. But the folks in Valley View like having their little town council and all that kind of thing. What we've unfortunately done is we've sort of trained people to expect that they can have their cake and eat it too. They can have all this little local stuff, but that's much more expensive than if they were to just become part of the city of Columbus. But talk to them. They want nothing to do with becoming part of the city.
Who has to lead on this? Who does it? I mean, we start with collective bargaining. I think most people agree that there are things in there that needed to reform, but they passed a bill that basically severely limits it. Can they do something similar with this local governments?
Yes, they can, and they're going to have to. The difficulty is that the moment I say the words consolidation in most rooms downtown, most people suddenly go, "Oh, look at the time! I have to be someplace else." And you listen to the governor. He often refers to we have to starve the beast. Okay, and he's referring to the local governments at this point in time. Most of these beasts are going to go into hibernation. Most of these small townships and villages, half of their money comes from the local government fund and or the estate tax. Now, that goes away. Too many times these local elected officials are not going to want to willingly give up their prestige, the money, the health care they have access to, and are going to hold on desperately to that until they get chaos. And the thing we keep trying to tell them, manage this change before the change starts to manage you, and you got to be proactive.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Gene Krebs, you go first.
I think the Democratic Party's making a mistake by keep having former Governor Ted Strickland come out and do rallies and dinners. This is the time for their farm team to be developed, and they need to, Ted served them well, but they need to develop their next crop, and now's the time to go ahead and plant those seeds.
Maybe he's going to go do something else.
Well, there we go.
Michael.
Whether we have to vote yes or no to overturn Senate Bill 5, Senate Bill 5 never sees the light of day and goes down 65-35 in November.
Okay. Karen.
Well, I think Michael's right, absolutely, that there's going to be a ballot issue at the very least, and I think there's a concern about this repeal. I'd like to watch the legislative process with the budget and see if there are going to be provisions of Senate Bill 5 that are put into the legislative version of the budget to kind of protect them from a possible repeal.
Okay. And Joe.
Ohio Treasurer Josh Mandel next week will create a federal campaign committee and begin raising money to challenge Sherrod Brown for for U.S. Senate.
Okay. My off-the-record comment, I have to steal Karen's Facebook post. She had an April Fool's post saying that they are offering naming rights for the State House. I suggest that they could perhaps call it the Limited State House.
I think Gene's behind that.
That's Columbus on the Record for this week. We urge you to check us out online. All that fun Facebook stuff is there. Our links to Facebook and Twitter. You can connect to all of that on our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew here at WOSU at COSI and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.